All right. Hi, everybody. We have a few folks just sort of trickling in. We will be getting started in just a few minutes here, but great to see all of these faces. Just to give everyone a heads up, we do have the chat feature open, so feel free to throw any sort of questions, comments, anything in there. Anything we don't get to today, we will make sure to follow up via email over the next day or so. So yeah, we should be getting going probably about 2 or 3 minutes, folks. We'll try to get started just shortly after 1 o'clock Eastern. All right, folks, we're going to go with about the 1-minute warning here. I've got a good amount of folks here, some friendly faces, which is always lovely to see. So we should get going in, yeah, probably just about a minute or so. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to our BI webinar today. So my name is Sean Harris. I'm the Director of Customer Experience here at Function Software. With me, I've got Alec McLeod, who is our product specialist on the Function Point side. Alec, I'm going to go ahead and say hi to the group.
Hey, folks. Good morning, good afternoon. Great to be joining you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Alec. Folks, if you were here with us for the Industry Report webinar, you'll recognize both of us. Those of you that weren't there for it, pleasure to meet all of you. What we're going to be going through today are some various reports that are part of our BI suite. I do like to say that this is, even though the webinar was titled the top 5 reports, really what we're going to be looking at today is 4.5. We're going to be paying attention to 4 reports specific from that BI module. And then we're also going to be taking a look at our work planning view, just in terms of resourcing. It is a visual report, so we do want to make sure that we touch on that as well. But yeah, quick high level, folks, this is what we're going to be going through today. So just a quick sort of rundown of sort of where we're at, like why it's so important that we're paying attention to BI right now. We're going to be going through those 5, 4.5, whatever you want to call it, reports that we find to be particularly useful for folks, just in terms of keeping an eye on revenue, margin, etc. As we're going through that, Alec is going to be jumping in and actually demoing how to build these reports, and then sort of walking through, what the reports look like and what you need to pay attention to on them. So we'll have lots of breakaways for that, and then certainly at the end we'll have time for any sort of Q&A. Right, folks, with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Again, just to reinforce, guys, the chat feature is open. So if there's any questions that pop up throughout the course of this, we do have Jess Bird managing that. I think a lot of you have worked directly with Jess in the past. By far, one of the biggest experts we have here at Function Point. So she's here to monitor any of the chats that come through. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, folks. So as of right now, why does BI matter more than ever? Well, there's no other way to put it. I know if you guys follow any of the evening talk shows, they keep mentioning unprecedented times. We are certainly in unprecedented times. Things are unpredictable, to say the least. The one thing we'd say is that resilience at this point isn't a buzzword. It's a necessity. So there are constant challenges, economic fluctuations, shifting client expectations, rapid technological advancement, just with AI over the last few years. We need to be resilient, and we need data to inform that resilience or to help with that resilience. It's really built on three pillars: strategic planning, robust business models, and a dedicated and empowered team. But without clear visibility into those areas, making informed decision, it really sort of becomes a game of chance. We want to try to eliminate that chance as much as possible. One thing that I'm sure you've heard from any older person, myself included, you can't improve what you can't measure. It's equally important to identify what you need to measure, though. So focusing on the wrong metrics can obviously lead to misguided strategies, missed opportunities. We want to make sure that we're focusing you on what really matters, what really counts, and that's really what the brunt of this webinar is about today. We're going to show you some reports that hone in on what we think really does help to get the most out of Function Point, but also just the reporting that you're using just to drive your agency. All right. So the very first one that we're going to be looking at today is our team productivity report. The one thing I'd say, tracking time, that's something that, we definitely always talk about here with Function Point. The grand scheme of things, folks, time is your inventory, right? With most agencies, it's rare that we are holding inventory in stock and selling them to folks anymore. So really, that inventory is time. We're not shipping products, we're selling hours. So if we're not really tracking that time properly, profitability is going to suffer. So these productivity reports that we're going to be going through today, they're going to help us sort of dive in by team, by person, by task, and we're going to be looking at probably what is most effective. With these breakdowns, you're going to be able to see billable versus non-billable. We're going to be able to see some utilization trends, and we can even get down to the task level. So what that means for us in a very practical sense, it's smarter resource allocation, more accurate scoping, and then better client outcomes. Now, folks, if you were there for the industry report, in terms of why this matters, and we'll keep sort of circling back to this throughout the course of the webinar. If you don't have a copy of that industry report, please just ask. We are more than happy to send that through. But in that industry report, it did identify that average billability and billable rates right across the board had dropped to 62%. So that's kind of a warning sign that time is obviously being spent, but we're not always recovering that time. Another stat that came from that industry report is that 76% of agencies are saying they track time on all projects, but only 33% of those agencies trust that accuracy. So ideally, folks, these BI tools that we're looking at, they're going to help you to close that gap and give you reliable and actionable data that you can base some pretty solid decisions on. One last point I'd make about this before we pass it over to Alex so he can actually demo how this thing is built, but 32% of agencies have reported that their teams still feel somewhat overworked. So anything that we can do to sort of get visibility into that, it's going to be critical, not just for profitability, but also for sustainability. Making sure that our teams are where they need to be, doing what they need to be doing. All right, folks, I'm going to pass this over to Alec, and he's going to go ahead and build this team productivity report out for us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sean. So we've covered the why. Now let's talk about the how. So go ahead and share my screen. All right. So Sean mentioned we'll be building this report together in our BI reporting module. But first, I'll use this opportunity to orient us in navigating to the reporting module and then using the reporting interface. So let's start off. I'm in Function Point right now. So to access our reporting module, we'll mouse over to Reports in the main navigation bar and select BI Reports. You'll notice that this takes us to a new interface here. Again, this is our reporting interface. However, we can always hop back into the Function Point dashboard by mousing over to Exit and then selecting Back to Dashboard. Upon opening the module, we can see this folder structure on the left-hand side and then a list of reports here on the right. So here we can select from any of the default reports included with function point out of the box, as well as any custom reports. Oh, we lost the screen share for a sec. We may have done. 1 second here. Let's just confirm, are we back? Sean, can you see my screen here?
We got you back, my friend.
Okay, technical difficulties, love it. So let's pick
Not a
up where we
webinar
left off
without
here. So yeah, we've got our interface here. We can see this flat list of folders on the left-hand side, and then some reports on the right-hand side. Here we can select from any of the reports that are included with function point out of the box, as well as any custom reports that we've built and saved. We're not going to dip into every single report today, but note that the reports are categorized into folders here based on the type of report. So for any invoice level reports, let's say, I can select the invoice report folder and then select from these reports. Or for reports on internal expenses, I can select internal expense report and then select from those list of reports. At the top of the list, we have our all and recent folders. So this gives us a flat list of all of our reports at once, or just those that we've interacted with recently. So to the right, as mentioned, we have a list of all the reports themselves. These are separated into these standard out-of-the-box reports and then any saved reports. However, I can also use this search field at the top to search for a specific report by name. So let's get cracking on team productivity report then. For context, we're working with data in our BI module. We always use either a standard or a saved report as a starting point. And that's because different reports have different data sources and levels of granularity. So that invoice report I referenced earlier clearly uses invoice data as its source. For our team productivity report, we're interested in staff efficiency and billable hours. So my best bet is to start with a standard report related to staff. So I'm just going to search for the word staff here, and I'll see a list of reports that have staff in the name. For our purposes, we'll select efficiency, all staff. After selecting a report, we have the opportunity to filter our data. So here I might select staff from a specific office, or perhaps those with a specific role or belonging to a specific team, or perhaps I wanted to scroll down and focus on a specific date range, like the past month or the past quarter. In our case, I'm going to proceed without any filters here and just select continue. Finally, we can select how to visualize our data here. With our BI reporting add-on, we're able to pull data into a pivot grid or to visualize our data in a bar or line graph. We will see the bar graph today, but my advice for you when building a new report here is to start with a table. This allows us to organize our data a little bit more easily before doing anything else. So let's leave table selected and proceed to build our report. Whenever we open a report, we'll see this little window like you can see here. It gives us some control over the columns included in the report. For example, I'm not interested in staff cost, so I could disable cost if I wanted to. Or perhaps I wanted to include staff role. I can toggle that on to include it in this report, which I will here. When satisfied, I can select confirm. I do want to note we can still add any columns after the fact. This isn't our only opportunity to do so. All right, so here's our staff data in a table. I have rows for each member of staff and then columns for data such as total hours, billable hours, etc. And I can change the order of columns by dragging them around. So I have my role column. I can drag that over to be next to staff, just to help more easily sort of visually organize this data. Columns can also be renamed. For example, I have this column titled number of jobs. This is per person. I can rename this, say, to, let's say, workload. This doesn't affect the column names in any of my other reports or for any other users. This is customization for this report only. Now, we may have already forgotten what Sean's team productivity report looked like, but to jog everyone's memory, we're interested in two specific columns here. The first is billable hours percentage. So this is the percentage of billable hours relative to total hours tracked per staff member. And the second is staff role, because we're more interested here in perhaps seeing average billability by team or role than perhaps individual team member. With that in mind, let's switch this report to a bar graph now. We can do this on the fly by mousing over to our visualization drop down here in the top left-hand corner, and then selecting bar graph. So right now, nothing to see yet, but I do have buttons in the top left-hand corner to add X and Y axes columns to my bar graph. So I'll select role here as my X-axis. And then for my Y-axis, I'll select that billable hours percentage. Finally, some data here. So as an optional step, I could differentiate between these roles with different colors by first selecting color by here and selecting a role again. And now I have a unique color per role in my bar graph. So here we have it. This is our team productivity report. Again, what we're seeing here is average billability by role. Interesting, notably, this highlights that our creative director and freelancers have the highest billable hours percentage here, while our account executive at the lowest. Now, these roles may have varying targets, of course, so this isn't the full story, but those targets could be added to this table or bar graph after the fact. But for now, let's just quickly close the loop on creating a report. Perhaps we wanted to give this graph a name here, or a title. I can do so from our graph properties, and I'll label this as billable percentage by role. You can see that updates the title of my graph. And then I'll save this custom report to my account. So I'll mouse over to menu and then select Save As. Let's give this report a name here. I'll call it Team Efficiency. And then select Save. So that's our first report under our belt. This is now, of course, saved under my account for future reference. I will also say we'll move a little bit quicker with our next reports, but for now, Sean, I'll hand it back to you.
Alec, thanks so much. One quick question that just came into the chat here is how do you eliminate PTO hours when you're calculating the billable hours? Do you have an easier way to do that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's going to do with filtering some of the underlying data, or perhaps adding a custom calculated column. Currently, this report that we prepared together is focused on billable hours only, but typically your PTO would be perhaps tracked as non-billable time. So maybe out of scope for this specific webinar, but that's a good question. It has to do with either filtering out or focusing on a different column when we're building that bar graph.
Perfect. And folks, just to reinforce anything that we're not able to get to today, we will certainly follow up via email. All right, guys, back to our content. So Alec, thank you for running us through that first report there. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the second one here, which is client overservicing. So I'll hazard a guess that everybody has run into this at some point. We've all got customers that we tend to overservice, and like candidly, when we do that, it really feels like great service that we're providing. We're trying to go above and beyond. We totally get it. At the end of the day, though, it does cause us to basically bleed profitability, right? It always starts with a good intention. Either the client's underestimating their needs, possibly the scope has changed mid-project, the account team is trying to be flexible. It could even be going for more of a strategic play. So basically trying to secure some extra work for that customer by going the extra mile now. But at the end of the day, we can still obviously run into a lot of problems with this. So this report that we're going to look at here, this is really meant to show what that budget burn rate looks like. So how quickly and how completely that client's budget is being used. You can break this down by job type. You can break this down just basically to see if you're coming in under budget, over margin. You really get a lot of insights from this report. The one thing I would mention just in terms of that industry report that we used is that, and this is kind of a shocking figure, 79% of agencies admitted over the last year that they regularly overservice their customers without any additional compensation. So again, while we're trying to provide as great of a service as possible, when we're not really being compensated for that, it just ends up being non-sustainable. It's essentially we're digging ourselves into a hole. So this report's really meant to address that. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Alec and we'll run through how to build this one.
Thanks, Sean. Let's go ahead and share our screen here. So I'll forgo the preamble on the second part, and we'll start by selecting the right standard report for the job. So we're back at our BI reports list. And for our client overservicing report, my best bet is to start off with a standard report that includes job data, giving me both budgeted and actual hours, along with a client name. I'm currently in our all folder, and if I type in the word client, we can see a few different reports here, but notably projects and jobs by client summary. This one should serve as a good starting point for this report. As with our first report, we have the opportunity here to filter out data perhaps to a specific set of clients or a specific account executive or job type. Again, that date range filter is very useful for a time-bound report as well. For our purposes, I'm going to filter this report to a specific account executive, namely Victoria, and then select continue. So here's our report data. Again, just to orient us, note that we have a list of jobs here with columns that include company name, we have account executive. If I scroll over, we'll have estimated and actual dollars and hours. When comparing estimated and actual amounts, we might consider our overall spend versus budgeted amount in dollars. But in the case of our report here, I'm going to look at hours. So that is the time tracked for client work compared to what was budgeted. In fact, this variance is already included in this out-of-the-box report here as the column titled Hours Variance. So I mentioned with our first report that these columns could be renamed. This is a good example of where it's useful. I might rename this column to % budget used, let's say. So let's bring the same data into a bar graph, again, by mousing over to our visualization dropdown and selecting bar graph. I'm interested in that budget used column, so I'll add that as my y-axis. And for our x-axis, I'll select company name. So here's a resulting bar graph. So we see here Victoria's 6 clients, it looks like. And judging by how the bars stack up against the tick marks here, it looks like we are overservicing one of her clients. So here we have 100%, and Kingsgate is just surpassing that 109% budget use. This is interesting and definitely a great way to capture this information graphically, and something I think I'd probably want to bring to Victoria's attention in this case. So let me first give this graph a title, as we did last time. We'll call it % budget used by client. And then let's save it. So I'll save it, and we'll call it client overservicing. Now this report currently exists within my account in Function Point. However, any report that I build can be shared with other users in the Function Point system. So as mentioned, I wanted to share this report with this account executive, Victoria. So I'll first mouse over to menu and then select share. Here I can search for and select members of staff. So let me search for Victoria, and then I'll hit share. And that's it. Victoria will now be able to see the same bar graph saved under their account. Sean, that's 2 reports done. I'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alec. Let's go ahead and hit report number 3. And I know it says 2 on my screen, folks. Like I said, it wouldn't be a webinar without some technical difficulties. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So this one here, folks, is really focusing on retainer profitability. I've been with Function Point since 2015, took a bit of a break there, but retainers have always been bread and butter. This is something that we always talk about. One thing that we don't always talk about, though, is that, you know, retainers can definitely be a double-edged sword. They're great in terms of having that recurring revenue come in for our customers. You can model off of them. It's really stability. However, just like in the last example, talking about overservicing, they can very quickly become a hole. A lot of agencies assume that retainers guarantee higher margins. Data does show otherwise. That retainer is only profitable if that service delivery does stay in scope. So again, this is where some of these BI tools are really going to come in just to help to make sure that you're not going over. It's going to help you to spot patterns. If you are noticing a client does consistently go over on a monthly basis, to me, that's a conversation prompt, right? That's either something that you're going to have to go back to that client with and, possibly renegotiate what that retainer looks like. It might be a coaching opportunity for your team, just sort of letting them know, hey, we're consistently going over here. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that visibility, it's really tough to have those conversations. So really, this is what this report is meant to show off. And again, kind of going back to that industry report number, 79% of agencies report regularly over servicing. You can take away one thing today, folks. It's that, like, have that visibility into where you are spending your time versus what you're recovering. Definitely something that we all need to be paying attention to, especially right now. Right, so I'll pass it over to Alec, and he's going to show us how to build it.
All right, cheers, buddy. All right, so for retainer profitability, we'll want to start with a report that includes job data. Many of our standard reports can serve as a jumping off point for this, but in this case, I'm going to opt for the aptly named job data report. Next, we apply our filters. For our purpose today, I want to zoom in on a particular retainer. So I can search for it from the project name filter because I'm using a structure for my retainers where we have a project for the overarching retainer. All right, that retainer project is called North Shore S&M retainer. Again, for context, this retainer job, our project rather, consists of 12 jobs. So that is one for each month of the retainer. Now, depending on your agency's business needs and workflows, you may have your retainer set up a little differently and thus may need a different standard report as a starting off point, or perhaps a different set of filters, but the resulting report that we're creating will look the same in the end. Okay, so here's our report data. Again, this data is filtered to my retainer project, so I only have 12 line items. That is one for each job in the retainer. And I have columns here that include estimated and actual dollar amounts, and then their variance. Now, the variance column is what interests me today. A positive variance here indicates to me that not all of the retainer budget was burned in a given month, and a negative retainer here, or negative variance rather, indicates that we went over the budget. So we're favoring bar graphs today, so let's bring the same data into a bar graph. And by selecting from our visualization dropdown, bar graph. So I'll add that actual versus estimated variance to my axis. And for our x-axis, I'll select job open date. Again, this is because in the case of this retainer structure, jobs align to those months. And here's our bar graph. We can see this month-by-month budget usage laid out very clearly. And in fact, the 2 months in which we went over budget do pop out. They appear below this $0 tick mark. So that was July 2024 and December 2024. Now with this report, we have shown it as a bar graph, but I would encourage you, if you are so inclined, to try bringing the same data into a pivot grid as well. So that's something that is out of scope for today's webinar, but it will provide you with some useful summary info that will undoubtedly unlock further insights. But for now, that's it. It's just a quick look at building a retainer report. Sean, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Alec. One thing I'd really stress, folks, with that report specifically, when you're doing your end of year reviews, quarterly reviews, that is such a powerful tool just to have up as you're going through and sort of looking at what's happened in the business over the past quarter, half, whatever it is, being able to quickly and visually see where you're profitable in those months and where you're not. It's just a vital tool, right? Just being able to show that we're actually under in these 2 months, or worst case, maybe you have a retainer where 8, 9, 10 of the months you're below that zero line. Very, very quick visual reference to show what's going on. So incredibly powerful tool. All right, folks, let's go ahead and talk margins here. So the one thing I'll certainly say about this, whenever you're quoting a job, you're not just pricing it. And again, if you can take away a few takeaways from this webinar today, this is an important one. This is one that really rings true to me. Whenever you're quoting that job, you're not just pricing it, you're projecting a margin, right? So that's something to consider in terms of how you're putting your pricing together. But where do you want that margin to be? So is that 35%? Is it 50? the target should be baked into your planning and your resourcing, and it should also be used as a success metric. So I guess the big question is the flip of that coin. What happens if that margin doesn't materialize? Like, let's be honest, it does happen more than we'd like to admit. And oftentimes that loss isn't always obvious. It can be scattered across job types, account managers, even pricing tiers. That's why this report specifically is so useful. It's going to give you a direct line of sight into what you expected to make versus what you actually made. And again, you can break that down by job type, client, account executive, something to, again, just really sort of visually pay attention to, what is most profitable for you. One thing that does come up, maybe it's something you don't even think about, is something as simple as a discounting pattern. So maybe there's a 1 AE that you have that's constantly sort of going under. Maybe there's 1 AE that's constantly going over. So it's a coaching moment. But again, if you don't have that visibility, it's really tough to have those conversations. So that's what this report is really meant to reinforce. And again, sort of tying this back to that industry report, which again, we can certainly send out. We show that 58% of agencies do list revenue growth as their number one challenge, and profit leaks are obviously a big threat to that. So really having a handle on where those margins are, super important, especially in today's economic climate. You can't fix what you can't see, but if you can see it, at least you know where you need to adjust. So let's go ahead and pass it over to Alec, and he'll go ahead and build this one out for us.
Alrighty then. So for a report on margins, we'll want to begin with a standard report that includes job profitability data. And this is something you could certainly derive from many of our job level standard reports. But the data that we're after is actually included out of the box in our profit analysis report. So I'll select that here. Once selected, let's say that we're interested in margins for jobs in the last calendar year. So I can scroll through my list of filters here and find the job open date. And I'll select last calendar year from our list of available date ranges. So this is going to pre-filter my data to just data within the last calendar year. So this report includes a slew of financial columns out of the box. It's really a standard report, but to simplify things, I'm actually going to toggle all of these off and then add only the columns that I'm after today. So these columns are job type, which will be every job. This is as I'm interested in looking at margin across my agency's business areas. And I'm also interested in estimated profit margin, actual profit margin as percentage. Those are other. So estimated profit and then actual profit. I'll click continue. So here is our report data. What we have is a list of jobs with an open date within the last year. And for each, we have a couple of financial columns. So that includes estimated profit and then actual profit. So we're right. Let's bring this same data into a bar graph again. By going under table and selecting bar graph. So I'm interested in seeing margin by job type, so I'll start by adding that to my x-axis. And then for my y-axis, I'll be adding 2 columns in this case. Those were the estimated profit. Sorry, we may be having audio. Sean, are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear you now. It just seems to be skipping a little bit. Sounds like an old CD.
Okay. Luckily, we're on our last couple of reports. I apologize if that's the case here. That's likely something on my end. Just to clarify what we're doing again, we're setting up our X and Y axes for this final bar graph. So I've added job type as my X axis, and I mentioned we're adding 2 columns here for our Y axis. One is that estimated profit, and one was actual profit. So here's our bar graph. We have 4 job types showing. It's branding, brochure, retainer, and website. And for each, we have 2 bars. Again, that's projected margin on the left and then actual margin on the right. Already some insights pop out at us. We can see that both brochure and website work, our actual margin seems to come in much lower than our project margin, which is interesting. But before we leave this report, I do want to demonstrate how we might glean further insight from this same data source. And we'll do this by changing my x-axis. So currently we're looking at margin by job type. But again, there's a whole slew of columns available to us here. So let's go ahead and remove job type. And let's replace it with account executive. All right, so now I can see margin based on the AE responsible for these jobs. So perhaps some interesting insights to be gleaned from this. But how about by client? So again, I can remove AE and replace it with company. And now we have margin broken out by client. So after our webinar, I would encourage you all to explore data like this in order to glean insights. If you've been using Function Point for a while now, you'll have certainly accumulated plenty of data to explore within our BI reporting module. Sean, hopefully my audio is still okay. I'll hand things back to you here.
All right, thanks so much, Alec. Home stretch here. Folks, just a heads up, Alec has actually gone ahead and prepared a walkthrough article that we can use. Essentially runs through how to build all these reports as well. So that's something that we'll shoot out after this webinar. We also have a ebook that's based on all of these reports as well. So tons of supporting material, folks. I'd urge you connect with your CSMs once this is done. We'll send some proactive follow-up regardless, but please feel free to follow up with your CSM. We're here to support. All right, folks, home stretch. Like I said, we are looking at, call it 4.5 reports today. The last one that we're looking at really isn't a report. It's something that's in everybody's system, but this is our work planning view. And the reason why we want to pay attention to this today, really it comes down to efficiency, folks. We've talked about visibility at this point. All these reports have shown us where we're potentially leaking profits, what we might need to adjust. This one's a little bit more tactical. This is showing us sort of what folks have on their plate and where we can potentially fill that time or where we might even need to back off. One thing I'd note here, in terms of using this work planning view, if again, you can take away one thing specifically from this, the better planning we can put into it, the fewer times we have to rely on things like freelance hires, as an example. We know a freelance hire, that's going to be 20 to 30% more expensive due to any sort of rush rates. It can mean things like overtime hours. We really want to try to limit that as much as possible, especially in today's economic environment. So having that visibility to be able to see what folks actually have on their plate and where you can fill that time most efficiently, it really is vital. So without further ado, Alec is going to go ahead and run through the work planning view at a pretty high level here. And that'll about wrap us up, folks. Alec, over to you, my friend.
All right, thanks again, John. So I'm hopeful that many of you are already somewhat familiar with our work planning view. It is our short-term forecasting tool providing visibility into the availability and workload of your team. It's an essential tool for traffic managers who are allocating work across staff, both in the moment and in the future. Now, to access this page, we're going to mouse over the tasks menu here and select work planning view. It's this last item in the list. And this is what it looks like. So we have here a list of staff on the vertical axis, staff and roles, I should say, and then calendar days on the horizontal axis. Within each of these staff rows, you can see colored bars. These represent assigned tasks. So we have overdue tasks in red here, and then assigned or in progress tasks in blue, and then draft tasks are purple. So these are tasks that maybe we're working on for some future work, but we haven't actually committed to or put onto someone's task list just yet. So immediately we have insight here into what's on our team's plate over the next couple of weeks. Now, where the work planning view excels is when we've estimated time against our tasks. Because when we estimate time, we can see where staff are overloaded or where they might have a capacity to take on more work. So let's take a closer look here at one of my project managers, Victoria. Notice the numbers above each day in her row here. See here, 8 out of 8. The first number indicates that Victoria has been assigned 8 hours of work for that day, And the second number is her capacity for work. So 8 hours of work that she can do in a day. And the cell here is colored orange when staff are fully allocated, as is the case with Victoria for the next few days. If we look at next week, Victoria's been allocated 6 hours of work on the Thursday and then 10 hours on Friday. Notice that that cell is colored red, and that's the case when staff are over allocated like this. So it's popped out to me, which is great. And this leaves me with a couple of options to ensure we still meet the deadline for this work. One option is to move something off of Victoria's plate for the day, perhaps to the Thursday or to next week. Alternatively, I can move the work to another member of staff. Luckily, my other project manager, Jess, has capacity for work on that same day. So if I select the taskbar here, a window is going to open up that will allow me to change some details about the task. So perhaps estimated hours, the start and due date, but in our case, assignee. So I'm going to change the assignee from Victoria to Jess. I'll hit save, and we'll see that task pop off of Victoria's list and into Jess. So now we have ensured that no one is over capacity for the next couple of weeks. So this is just a simple example. In a more realistic scenario, we might choose to filter some of this data here using our list of filters on the left-hand side, or we might look further into the future, seeing where we have capacity to take on work in, let's say, a month's time. But I'm hopeful here that you can imagine how this tool would benefit you and your team. If this is not something that you're already leveraging, then please feel free to explore the additional resources we have on this on our website, or reach out to your CSM for more info. Sean, my friend, that is it for me.
Awesome, Alec. Thank you so much. And folks, this is an area of the system that just keeps getting better. So stay tuned. There are lots of improvements. All right, folks. So sort of bringing this together today. Again, few things that we can really take away. No nice way to put it, guys. It's tough right now. Times are tough all over. The one thing that I would really sort of stress is it's not even necessarily about outperforming other groups at this point. It's about out-informing those groups. And what I mean by that is the best thing that you can have, the best tool that you can have in your back pocket is data, right? It drives everything. It drives everything in our business here. It drives everything right across the board. The more data you have, the better calls you're going to be able to make, the better decisions you're going to make to drive that business. It's especially important when times are tough, right? You have to try to make the right call. This is going to give you the tools to do that. The one thing I'd say, just to sort of bring this back to that industry report, folks, is 40% of agencies, they're still managing their operations through siloed tools that don't really talk to each other. Now that trend is shifting. We're seeing 35% consolidating into one or two comprehensive platforms because they are seeing that ROI. But at the end of the day, folks, if you're currently using Function Point, you're using BI, you're taking the place of sort of that management tool, as well as something like Excel, as well as something like Tableau. You're having it all in one place, right? And having that data in one place is going to give you those insights that you need to really drive the business, especially in times that are a little bit tough. So folks, my recommendation here, we're going to be sending out some follow-up material on this. If you're using BI, dig in, really start sort of seeing what you can stretch the system to do. Your CSM is here to help. If you don't know who your CSM is, please let us know. You can go ahead and email support@functionpoint.com or client.services@functionpoint.com. If you are in touch with your CSM, reach out, ask for some additional training. That's what we're here to do. If you're not currently using BI, we are running a 1-month trial right now. So all you have to do is reach out to your CSM, or again, reach out to support. Let us know that you're interested. We'll go ahead and get it set up for you. We just want folks to have that visibility right now. So, please use us. That's what we're here for. And yeah, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for being so attentive today. Great comments in the chat. We'll open it up for a few more minutes here, folks. If there are any questions that that we want to go ahead and address, please throw it in the chat there. All right. Thank you, Heather. And hopefully you all found that useful. Again, this might actually be the first webinar that we have ended exactly on time.
Carefully planned, for sure.
Here's a good one from Robert. Do you have any suggestions around how to do longer 6-month work planning or longer term?
Sean, I can certainly say that we're able to use the start and end dates on our work planning view. There's a couple of fields that allow us to adjust that view. So we're not stuck on the next 30 days. We are able to extend that and look at date ranges further in the future. So that way we can see what's on our team's plate, what our capacity is. We can really leverage the work calendar in Function Point as well to see where we have staff that are away. Maybe we have absences in the future. We can certainly accommodate those and see those within our work planning view when we're looking at future dates.
Awesome. Thank you, Alec. All right, Robert, hope that answered your question for you. All right, folks. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, folks, thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate it. We'll make sure we get some follow-up out for this. And again, if you're not currently using BI, please reach out to your CSM. Give it a shot. We're here to help you. It's an incredibly powerful tool. We want you to get the most out of Function Point, and this is certainly one way to do it. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Take care.